One.
Okay. Well, welcome to Northern Light Spiritual Center, a community of people dedicated to using spiritual and practical principles to create lives we want to live. I am Reverend Vaughan Amaré, and all of this is possible because of our administrator, Reverend Mykal Amaré, who has created a space so that there is at least the 6-foot social distancing. And actually, if you're sitting down, you can take your mask off as long as you're not moving around. Once you get up to use the bathroom or anything, then the mask comes back on. So just letting you know that you don't have to be masked. You can be like the folks at home. And again, Mykal has set it up so that we have Zoom, we have Facebook, we have people in the room, and we are working diligently to use the technologies to the best that we can. Northern Light Spiritual Center offers practical and spiritual tools in terms of, in addition to the technology, to make positive changes in our lives. So please join me for our opening song in this very room. And everybody here knows it, so sing along if you'd like. Be sung to. In this very room, there's quite enough love for all the world. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all the world. And there's quite enough peace and quite enough power to walk through our every fear. For Spirit, sweet Spirit, is in this very room. So we have our reading today, which we have our meditation today, which Mykal will explain.
Good morning. Today, this meditation is going to be a silent meditation. It's going to be one where I'm inviting you just to go in. And so if you feel comfortable, get as comfortable as you can. And if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. So during this silence, I just invite you to ponder what it means to you personally to be free. What does it mean for you to be free? Just taking a couple deep breaths and release. Another deep breath in and release. And so what does it mean to you to be free? you to move your fingers and your toes. Bring yourself back to whatever room you are in. And so it is. As Reverend Vaughan said, it's a little complicated today, trying to do 3 medias. Um, Ready?
Oh, there, or there. Okay.
Just let me know when it's same thing.
Okay. My name is Alexa Ann Watson, and I am the great-great-great-granddaughter of
Frederick Douglass is my great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter
of Frederick Douglass.
I am the great-great-great-great-grandchild. I've been counting on my fingers since I was like 5.
This is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom.
Fellow citizens, I shall not presume to dwell at length on the associations that cluster about this day. The simple story of it is that 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers were wise men, and if they did not go mad, they became restive under this treatment.
With brave men, there's always a remedy for oppression. They succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary.
Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence?
Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us?
I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary.
Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common.
The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me.
The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me.
This 4th of July is yours, not mine.
You may rejoice, I must mourn. Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire.
It is not the gentle shower, but thunder.
We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake.
The feeling of the nation must be quickened.
The conscience of the nation must be roused.
The propriety of the nation must be startled.
The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed.
And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim.
To him, your celebration is a sham.
Your boasted liberty an unholy license.
Your national greatness, swelling vanity.
Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless.
Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence.
Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery.
Your prayers and hymns Your sermons and thanksgivings,
with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him
mere bombast,
fraud,
deception,
impiety,
and hypocrisy. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Allow me to say in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country.
This speech was written almost 170 years ago, but this part of it is still extremely relevant, especially with today's protests.
I think that when people are oppressed, they feel silenced, and if someone feels silenced, they get angry. There are certain tactics that you need to use to get people to really hear your voice, and it's not always going to be just like a very calm discussion.
I think he's mostly talking to the people who are already on his side, but believes that they can still try to talk this out, or that things are still justifiable. I know a lot of people at the time were saying, and people now are still saying that it's not as bad as it could be.
While the 4th of July probably does not feel the same to me as it does to others, I wouldn't say that it has no meaning, because it is the time when America, the country, became free from another country. But I would say that it's not the time in which I gained my freedom.
He had a lot of hope, especially for his age. And I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm only 20 years old, but I'm exhausted. I have these thoughts like, will we ever really get to this point, or is this really something that we should actually spend our time fighting for?
Somebody once said that pessimism is a tool of white oppression, and I think that's true. I think in many ways we are still slaves to the notion that it will never get better. But I think that there is hope, and I think it's important that we celebrate Black joy and Black life, and we remember that change is possible, change is probable, and that there's hope.
Did I do the wrong thing? Probably. So this month's theme, not surprisingly, is around freedom, and it's breaking our chains, or throwing off our chains, or unshaking or breaking our chains. So this song is in recognition of that. So, as you know, if you've been here before, first verse is I, second verse is you, third verse is we, and fourth verse comes back to I. If you don't learn it on the first verse, you are probably going to know it very well by the fourth verse, since it's the same thing repeated. Will I shake off the chains of my fears? Will I shake off the chains of my worries? Will I shake off the chains of my tears? Will I shake off the chains of my hurries? I look to my freedom within, my union with all of creation. I rise like my freedom within. I open to freedom's elation. off the chains of your worries? Will you shake off the chains of your tears? Will you shake off the chains of your hurries? You look to your freedom within, your union with all of creation. You rise like your freedom within. You open to freedom's elation. You are free. Will we shake off the chains of our fears? Will we shake off the chains of our worries? Will we shake off the chains of our tears? Will we shake off the chains of our hurries? We look to our freedom within, our union with all of creation. We rise like our freedom within, to open to freedom's elation. We are free. Will I shake off the chains of my fear? Will I shake off the chains of my worries? Will I shake off the chains of my tears? Will I shake off the chains of my hurries? To my freedom within, my union with all of creation. I rise like my freedom within. I open to freedom's elation. I am free. Thank you for joining my game. And the opening song is a spiritual that was referred to by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King in his I Have a Dream speech. And again, forgive us this this sequence of events that we have to do to gospel on all the platforms. Are you at 8 seconds?
Yes.
Okay. 2, 3. So, hello, thank you for being here. When Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King ended his I Have a Dream speech, he drew from the spiritual song, Let Freedom Ring. Letting freedom ring implies the inherent presence of freedom within us. It raises questions for us. If we believe the claim that Ernest Holmes proposed, spirit is in me, as me, through me, is me, then what does that level of being mean for freedom? What does it mean that will freedom look like? What will it feel like? And how does it call us to act? What does it mean to be free? So in today's talk, I'm going to be looking at three broad areas. Freedom as our birthright, freedom and its call not only to the rights that come out of it, but the responsibilities that it endows. And how do we bring about more freedom and truth? How is it that we, in, as, through, and being the divine, being spirit, how do we expand freedom and truth? So, in 1937, on July 4th, Ernest Holmes said, "I have read a large part of the religious and philosophic history of the world, and I have noticed that almost invariably, when the world traded one kind of religion for another, it didn't get a good deal. For example, the pilgrims who came to the shore to worship the divine in their own way, because they weren't allowed to worship in the way that they wanted to. However, the moment they got there, everybody in that colony had to worship the divine in the way that the strong-minded members of the community decided was the way to worship the divine. That was not freedom. True freedom, true liberty has something cosmic behind it. The idea that freedom itself is tied up with the true concept of the unity of good. If our nature, if spirit is one, then we are all tied back into an indivisible unity. We shall have to get back to this unity to find the meaning of freedom. Nothing in any part of this cosmic whole could be considered freedom that would destroy the liberty of some other part of it. It will surely come only in such a degree as we no longer do anything that hurts anyone. So, freedom as birthright. People are familiar with the Declaration of Independence, the idea that we are endowed with certain inalienable rights, which included liberty and the pursuit of happiness. But if that's our birthright, how do we deliver on that? If social and institutional processes cut us off from that birthright. Now, the majority of people here have had some blocks against their rights. As women, is there any evidence that women get paid equally to their male counterparts? Is your right to economic prosperity equivalent to what men have? I don't think it doesn't take a rocket science degree to be able to say no. The notion of the amendment that there should be, that women should have equal access to wealth and women should have equal access to opportunity. While women gained the opportunity to vote, those other things have not come forward. The Equal Rights Amendment for women has never gone through. So if you're a woman, those rights are not available to you. For the men that are here at the service today, Daryl, Mykal, and I, as queer guys, we don't have the same rights, and any of the queer women in the room don't have any of the same rights. We haven't, because state local governances could obviously just say, hey, I'm an employer and I don't like you because you're gay. I don't like you because you're lesbian. I just don't like it. It creeps me out. Now, why it creeps them out is more suggestive about something about them rather than about us. And yet, for so long, that's been the defended position. So, if you were a woman, you should have equal rights. Gay or lesbian or queer, how you identify it, equal rights have been suppressed or held down. And certainly, the color of the skin has made a huge difference. Many white people have tried to pretend that that was taken care of. After the Civil War, slaves were released. So what's the big deal? That's more than 100 years ago. And I make my voice sound like that because it really is a whiny excuse. The fact of the matter is that there are more black men in prison and jails than were ever held as slaves throughout all of history. So just think about it. The vast number of people held in slavery is less than the number of black men and women who are held in prison and jails now. It's inexcusable. And yet we have a whole industry built on that. The notion that slavery ended is just a fantasy. We have reinstituted it and reconstituted it and held it up as a business practice. You're all aware of the stories. If a white dude rapes somebody, he can get off with a slap on his hand. Actually, the lawyers will endeavor to make that person sound like an innocent victim. That's just what boys do. Yeah, that's just what boys do. Boys use violence, and they use sexual assault as a means to express their identity. So I'm saying all of this because if the notion that freedom is our birthright is really true, then we have to look hard and long at the institutions, at the society where we live, and we have to figure out how to call it out. We can't simply stand by and say, that's just the way it is. There's a song, isn't there? That's just the way it is. Some things never change. But the point of that song actually is that hoping and keeping things just the way it is not what we're supposed to be doing. What kind of changes can we do? The first change is that we become aware of ourselves. Freedom asks us, where am I free? And is this place where I'm free? Are other people free there too? I know for a fact my white privilege has endowed me with so many more advantages. And so I have to ask myself, how do I use my white privilege as a leverage? How do I use it as a foot in the door? When I'm at a school that is in service of minority children, how do I use my identity as a white man to kick through the obstacles that my district imposes as a school district? Our school district claims that it is seeking racial justice. But when I see a black student end up in an social emotional learning classroom where his access to general education curriculum is lunchtime. That's the extent of his access. Whereas if a white boy or a white girl engages in many of the same behaviors, they end up in what's called an access class instead of that social emotional learning class. And in the access class, they get to have a paraprofessional go with them through the course of the day, moving with them so that they can take place and participate in general education classes. They can have a general education science class, education social studies class, they can have a general education elective, and they get to move through the school at the same time that others do. I say this out loud because what it means is I have to start asking the questions about these placements. I have to ask, how do we make that social emotional classroom, which is mostly brown children, how do we give that classroom the same level of access and the same level of freedom? How do I stand up with that teacher in that classroom who does not have access to the curriculum? I speak this way because I'm trying to give an example of what I can do in my daily life. It's not easy and it's not pleasant when I stand up with that teacher and say, she needs access to these materials. Her students need access to the materials. It's uncomfortable. It's so much easier to just shove people out of the way. It's so much easier to keep people in their chains. So, freedom is our birthright. Makes us ask the questions, what freedoms do I have? And where can I go with that freedom? Now, freedom, clearly, it endows certain rights. How many people have ever heard the idea that if we're in this free society, we have certain rights? Has anybody heard people talking about their rights lately? a big thing about rights is that there it has become this huge political shenanigans about the right of, my rights are infringed upon because I have to wear a mask. Oh, woe is me. There isn't this whining about wearing a seatbelt. There are laws about seatbelts, and there isn't whining about it. There's laws about when a license to drive a car. There are licenses about when you're old enough to be able to drink or to purchase marijuana, at least in the state of Washington. It's not legal in Colorado. It's not legal in other places. But for some reason, this notion of having to wear a mask has become this huge, some sort of litmus test on our rights as individuals. Well, that's why I want to bring out the other side of rights, which is responsibilities. And to the people here, I handed out a sheet. In 1985, this organization came up with a Bill of Responsibilities, and we will post it, we will send it out to people on Zoom. The notion of responsibilities is, let me read a couple of them. Responsible in our actions and the consequences of our actions. Respecting the rights of others. Giving sympathy and understanding to others. To do your best to meet your needs and your family's needs. To respect and obey laws. To respect the property of others. To share with others our appreciation and the obligations of freedom. To participate constructively in political life. To offer in the defense of our country. And to respect and meet responsibilities on the responsibilities that democracy demands. Now, I'm giving people this as a groundwork, as a grounding place to be thoughtful about what our responsibilities are. There are a couple of items here that I would actually challenge a little bit. For instance, the notion of respecting laws. There are a bunch of laws that are misinformed. And I bring this up because a couple of the best known people were people who called laws into question. I remember as a teenager, I was really into Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I was really into Gandhi. These were people who stood up against laws that were unjust and wrong. Can anybody really say that Jim Crow laws were a good idea? Can anybody really say that the separation, that certain people had to go to this bathroom or that bathroom, or this drinking fountain or that drinking fountain, or this restaurant or that restaurant? The laws that, who really cares who your beloved is? Really, what business of anybody is what I do with my genitalia? Why is that such a big deal? So, in terms of responsibilities, I offer this as a point so that we can be asked about what are our responsibilities. So, in the case of laws that are unjust, I would have to consider, is it our responsibility to reach out to our representatives and say, it's on you to change this? We have a Senate that has been sitting on literally countless bills. because it's politically expedient. It makes them look good. It's on us to complain. The notion of, I'm not really sure that making out handouts during a time of this COVID virus is a smart idea. The other side of it is, I really don't care if people get thrown out of their homes. I really don't care if people can't meet their financial obligations and it means that they're going to go bankrupt. I really don't care. Is that the kind of society we want to claim is our society? That we really don't care. I would propose that it's our responsibility to care. I think everybody's kind of familiar with the notion of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. When we see that the golden rule is stepped on, is thrown out like a doormat and then walked all over and said that it's stupid to follow the golden rule, that we are called in responsibility to name that, to speak to it, and to stand up for it. One of the things that the speakers, that the writers of this week's talk described was, the freedom that you enjoy must be given to everyone, regardless of race, color, creed, ethnicity, sexual orientation, sexual identity. We cannot separate ourselves without losing something of our essence. Freedom is the full advantage of the power of choice. Rosa Parks once said, I would like to be remembered as a person who wanted to be free so that other people would also be free. When people hear the story of Rosa Parks, sometimes they just think, well, this was a woman who stood up for herself on the bus. The fact of the matter was that Rosa Parks had studied civil rights for some years. She wasn't someone that just off the street said, I'm going to stay in my seat. She had practiced this. She had trained for this. She had gone through all kinds of work to get to a point to the significance of her actions, not only for herself, but for others as well. We claim that it's our responsibility to look at where we are situated and to find out, how do we press? How do we push on the barriers that are there for us as individuals? So for every woman that's out there, how do you garnish support that your time of equality is so over? It is so much more the time than ever. How do you press the men in your lives to be as pushy and as outspoken as they can possibly be? How do you stand strong in your space for your rights? And that's just an example, because most of the people here at the service are women. The last thing I want to talk about is, how can we bring about more freedom? How can we establish a pathway to let freedom expand? And rather than a point of conversation. It's really a question that we all go home with. Edward Vaughan, who was the spiritual leader for Centers for Spiritual Living, asked the question, if I'm free, what are my rights that come with my freedom? If I'm free, what are the responsibilities that come with my freedom? How do I lean into these rights? How do I lean into these responsibilities? And expand it for others. The thing is that each one of us may hear a different call. How freedom will be expressed more fully. Some of us may feel really passionate about a particular issue or particular story. Back right after I graduated, I was in a volunteer program, and I just have to say a couple things about that. As a privileged white dude, I had the capacity to leave college and not have to figure out how to pay for college because my dad had certain privileges as a white dude to be able to pay for it. I was able to have my entire sophomore year, for some reason, be about $10,000 less than it normally would have been because of the arrangements that I had with the school. I ended up in a program that sent me to Ireland. And for the University of Notre Dame where I attended, the costs for my freshman year were different than the costs for my sophomore year. For my sophomore year, it amounted to $3,000 for the whole year because of the arrangements. Now that meant that my work over the summer really paid for that year. So I was through for that year. So I could graduate and I didn't have to have the debt hanging over my head. So I was able to go into a volunteer program where my first year I earned $500 a month. And it was not a lot of money when I had to figure out my food and my rent and being able to get around. The way that this group typically found to do it was to cohabitate. So there were 7 of us in a big house, in not that big of a house, that were sharing this space. And I was working probably 15 hours a day. I was a youth minister. I had come in and I was single-handedly getting to replace 2 youth ministers who had been there. And the things that I learned were, I wasn't as good as the 2 people. And people weren't all that happy with me because I wasn't as good as 2 people. So I had people that were unhappy with me. They're like, you're not doing all the things that the 2 people did. And it wasn't too hard to explain to them, I'm not 2 people. I'm sorry that I'm not 2 people. And I'm sorry that what you're paying for me is you're paying, whereas previously you've been paying $5,000 a month for your 2 people, you're now paying $1,000 a month for me. You're getting a good deal. But I didn't have the wherewithal. I just kind of went to work every day feeling kind of defeated. Feeling kind of like I'm not good enough. And it was only I could look back and say, boy, I really let myself be victimized in that position rather than learning how to stand up for myself. But that experience gives me a way to move differently where I am now. I don't just automatically feel bad about myself that I can't do everything that everybody expects me to do. So when someone says, this report is late, I just ask the question, well, did you want the report done or did you want this done? Which did you want? You said you wanted this, and then afterwards you say you want this. The fact is that I can only get so much done. I'm not really hesitant anymore about being not good enough because I don't get stuff done. I try. I got a message on Wednesday. Mr. Amaré, will you help us with this? I'd love to help you with this, and it's going to be responsive. I'm going to contact my supervisor, and I'm going to contact my union because you're asking me to do this work when I'm not being paid to work. And you could find all of this out if you just go to this website, and you'll see a little apple for each one of these students, and the little apple means they have an IEP. Because that's what you're asking me to do. You're asking me, do these 10 students have an IEP? Magical. You can all go into this program and see if there's an apple. It's not hard to do. In the past, I would have been like, oh, but it's good for the kids and it's good for the program, and I'm not going to make anybody uncomfortable. And I checked it with Mykal. I said, does this sound respectful? Does it sound whiny? Does it sound bitchy? Does it sound anything that's negative? And he didn't accuse me of sounding bitchy or negative. I was asserting what was my right. That if I'm not working, then you shouldn't ask me to do this stuff on my time. Just because you can remark that this is around special education students for whom better conditions should be met. Yes, I want to do that, and I want people to know that don't ask me to work for free just because you've got a worthy cause. So our freedom invites us to consider what are our rights, what are our responsibilities. It invites us to ask, how do I expand the rights? What makes me feel passionate? Where will I work and serve? How will I give my freedom to expand freedom? Our former minister for many years just loves the animals. So a big part of her ministry is really about love and care for animals. Each one of us has a different calling. Each one of us has a different thing that brings us life and passion and vitality and energy. And that's what I would say is how the divine expresses through us. It's how freedom expands more into the world. Our passions, our energies. I mean, I look at Stephanie on the Zoom call, and Stephanie is this amazing designer who just has this image of how things can be in the world. And how she unfolds it is beautiful. It's magnificent. And that's her passion. That's what brings her vitality and energy and life. And her vitality and passion and energy infuses the world in a way that's never been seen or known before. Phyllis is on the call, and she has children whose artistic expressions are beyond wow. And I have to acknowledge and I have to celebrate that she, as a mom, generated a field into which these children could express themselves like this. Phyllis, like Stephanie, has donated part of her body to the care and well-being of others, of her son. He needed a kidney, and she gave it to him. She didn't stop and figure out what is this going to cost me? Stephanie didn't ask, what is this going to cost me? My sister who donated a kidney didn't ask, what is this going to cost me? It was about, they gave themselves so that others could live more fully and more expressively and more comfortably and more capably in the world. Daryl is working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 16-hour days in this time of COVID to keep millions and millions of people safe. That's the kind of people we have. Inspiring that we have this kind of generosity. We have Tan, who is listening to the heart and soul damage of so many people, and she is that in that space of listening, she is creating a field where new growth and new possibilities, where the freedom that is inherent in these people has fuller expression. And without her loving presence, it could not happen. These people would just continue to go through the world in suffering, in pain, in a state of hopelessness, in a state of depressed, diminished being. So the way that each of us expresses our freedom, we let freedom ring. Ask what's our passion. When we ask what is our freedom to do, also listen to what our passion is. Listen to what gives us vitality. Listen to joy. Listen to what gives us spirit, what uplifts us. And if the answers about our freedom don't come up right away, be kind and gentle to ourselves. So I give thanks for the freedom that we have. I give thanks for the freedom that we can expand into. I give thanks for all that inspires us, so that freedom is not a point of limitation, but is a point of endless expansion. And so it is. So, just going to take a moment here, and I'm going to call us to prayer. I'd like us to become silent for a moment, to become still for a moment. And as we breathe in freedom. We breathe in the freedom that spirit is, that expansion. We live in a universe that is continually expanding, moment by moment by moment. And the perceived limits of gravity, and the perceived limits of time, and the perceived limits of space, drop the perceptions and just be aware of the expanding universe, the expanding cosmos. Connect with that sense of expansion. This is life itself coming into form and just expanding at a rate that we cannot even begin to imagine or understand. And as this is the case for all of the universe, I know that this is the case for myself. And this is the case for everybody that is listening, everybody that is here, everybody that ever connects with this site. Each one of us is a point of limitless expansion. This is freedom. So I speak this word and I declare that each of us is uplifted by the freedom that comes from spirit itself, that comes from life itself, that comes from the universe, from the cosmos, that is in infinite expansion, and that as presences, as points, as expressions of this infinite expansion, that each of us gets to express, each of us gets to embody freedom through that which inspires us, through that which involves us, through that which engages us, through that which angers us, through that which enlightens us, through that which excites us. That each of us is a point of this expression and this expansion and this freedom. I give thanks for this. I give thanks for the infinitude, the way that freedom shows up, the way that each of us get to be places of expansion in the world, in the universe. And from this place of gratitude, I release these words to the automatic action of the law. Just like gravity is always working on this planet Earth, that automatic action of the law of mind, the law of spirit, is always working. The spirit is continually taking in what we believe, what we say, what we declare, what we claim, what we know, and it is bringing it into expression. So I close this prayer saying, Amen, Ashe, and so it is. So thank you for joining us at Northern Lights Community Center on Facebook or Zoom today. We're going to be here again next Sunday. If you'd like to donate to the center, go to our website, which is northernlightspiritualcenter.com. All one line, northernlightspiritualcenter.com. And you can hit it. For those who joined us on Zoom, please stay for our post-talk conversation that will include the people that are here. Facebook folks, we're sorry we don't have that interactive capacity yet, but we don't. You can show up on Zoom, or you can email us your ideas or your inspirations. I say thank you, blessings. Reverend Vaughan Amaré is saying thank you so much, and so it is. So, do people have, I have to unmute.